Hi, Marty Miller here with co-host, dear friend Wendy Batts for the Master Instructor Roundtable. In this episode of the Master Instructor Roundtable, we're talking about myths in strength training, and we're going to bust a bunch of them for you. So, Wendy, why don't you tease a little bit of what we're going to get into in this episode?
Oh, we go over if you lift heavy weights, you're going to get bulky. We're going to talk about what if kids should or should not do strength training and what we've found from that. We've talked about seniors and lifting heavy as well. Just a lot of fun stuff, Marty. It's a great episode.
Yeah, this topic is near and dear to my heart since this is what I've been trying to achieve my whole life. And we're even going to talk about rep ranges. Can you increase hypertrophy with reps over the typical 8 to 12? So be sure to tune in for this episode. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe, and enjoy the episode.
Welcome, everyone. I am Wendy Batts here with my co-host and friend, Dr. Marty Miller, and we are on the NASM Master Instructor Roundtable today talking to you about like different myths that we still hear. Marty, I know you and I were talking about this, and we get questions from people about things that we thought we had cleared up but are still out there. So we're going to talk about what trainers maybe are still getting wrong or possible questions that are going to come to trainers. So if you don't have them yet, hopefully we'll give you guys some ammo to leave with. So therefore, if these questions do come up, you'll know exactly how to answer them.
Yeah, I look forward to this. It's always good to review these concepts, and strength training is critical, and we're getting more and more attention to it. Thank goodness, with longevity for both males, females, and after a certain age, the importance of it. So I really do believe everyone will get some good key takeaways.
Yeah, so we're going to discuss experienced trainers can unintentionally pass along outdated and oversimplified ideas. And I am guilty because there are times where I'm just like, you know what, this is what I've read. And then somebody will say, well, did you read the 2025 article about this, that, or the other? I'll go back and read it. And you know what? That's one of the reasons why we constantly update the NASM CPT textbook, is because there are always new things that we're learning. And I think that's obviously very important. So we want to make sure that we're as updated as possible. One of the reasons I love NASM, by the way, one of many. Of course, we're going to talk about different myths that persist that sound totally reasonable. But then if you read the evidence, there's contradictions. So we're definitely going to go over those. And then, of course, common myths and why they are just that, myths.
Yep. So why don't we jump right into it and get started here. So Wendy, I'll read this one, see what your thoughts are, and then I'll follow up. So first one, high reps are for toning, low reps are for bulk. So muscle tone is about reducing body fat and maintaining and increasing muscle mass, which can be achieved with a variety of rep ranges if intensity is sufficient. So there's been a meta-analysis or many of these studies here now that show similar hypertrophy across rep ranges. For example, 6 to up to 35 reps when sets are taken near failure. And this was a research article in 2017 by Schoenfeld et al. So load matters less than effort for muscle growth. So what's your thoughts on that, Wendy? And what's the research showing?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why when you look at the OPT model, and we're looking at the different phases, right? We have phases 1 through 5 if we're just looking at CPT, or basically 1 through 7 if we look at the model as a whole and includes the CES and PES. And if you get someone in ideal form, and so therefore their body is working as optimally as possible, then rep ranges are going to be important, and you are going to have to do periodization, because if not, we do the same thing over and over again. We stop kind of growing or seeing changes because our body gets used to it. That's one of the reasons why we want to reevaluate every 4 to 6 weeks, see if we're ready to move up and do something different, because as we challenge the body, of course, we are going to see different changes. So when we're talking about hypertrophy, it's more than just, I think, rep ranges. We're taking, when somebody says something about, well, I want to tone up, I always ask them, what does that mean? Because they're looking for maybe to slim down, right? So it's not necessarily that they are looking for muscle tone. They just want to be able to see the muscles. And so therefore it's more of a weight loss. We're looking at calories, maybe looking at restrictions, looking at different types of of what they're eating and snacking on, seeing how much protein they're taking in, and then reevaluating that as a whole. So nutrition is going to play a big role in that. And you know what, if I'm always just doing, 1 to 5 reps, but I'm not eating that many calories, I'm really not going to bulk up. I mean, it may be heavy, but I'm not going to see a lot of changes. So you know what, I think when we're looking at hypertrophy, if you really want to get big, you want to look like this guy in the picture, you've got to have a really good nutrition program to go along with the actual type of programming that you're doing. And load does matter. I mean, it definitely does. But what is the effort that you're putting into the muscle growth, and what are you feeding your body to grow?
No, great points. And I think what I love about the OPT models, it does take care of a lot of this for us, in the sense that, if you're working to the end of those rep ranges under failure and you're fatiguing, right, then, you can progress to the next phase. But the good news is you don't have to only do heavier weights or moderate, depending on which way you look at it, for the hypertrophy phase of 8 to 12 reps. You can still get a hypertrophy effect at higher reps, but you have to go to fatigue. You have to stress the muscle at the cellular level to where there is a fatigue. So there's a lot that we could get into this conversation based on age, injury, and other things. So, maybe Wendy will come back and visit this in more detail. But if somebody maybe has injuries that they're working around, and anytime they pick up a quote unquote heavier weight, their injuries just flare up. Well, here's the good news. You don't have to lose muscle mass because you can't quote unquote lift heavy. Obviously, we're going to do our correctives and do everything to offset that. But if you have to do a higher rep range, because that's what your joints can handle from a stressor, you can still get that hypertrophy effect, obviously with the nutrition, the sleep, all that. But the key thing is you're going to have to work to fatigue. And most people leave something on the table. There's very few people that, with ideal form, for the right steps and for the right reps, really hit that fatigue. So I think that's where there's kind of some nuance to it, is work to failure, and then take all those other things into account that Wendy talked about, and you will see muscle hypertrophy.
So you're saying if I just grab 5-pound weights and just do curls all day, curls for the girls, I won't have the popping out biceps that I'm hoping for, that are lean and long?
Probably not.
This is one of my favorites, Marty. I'll read the question to you, and then I want your thoughts on this one. So myth 2, you have to change your workout every session to, quote, confuse your muscles. So this idea of muscle confusion is marketing fluff. Sorry, I had to write marketing fluff. That was just one of my things in there. But adaptation requires progressive overload, not constant novelty. Variation is useful, but too much can impair skill learning and progression. And periodization, like when you're looking at it, like the volume and varying that, we're looking at volume and intensity. It's not we're doing some random program, and hence why I love the model and why the model works. But I want your thoughts, because I hear now it's this big thing, muscle confusion.
Yeah, I think the key focus there is the word confusion, because we're trying to master form and technique. So, I view it in any other part of life. If I was teaching a first grader, would I just, for the sake of confusion, give them 3rd grade math and then 5th grade math and then maybe back to 1st grade math? No one would ever think that makes sense. You got to have building blocks to move and master something. Now, with that being said, can you get creative, and can you hijack things so that way it appears to be a different exercise, but you're working on a movement pattern so the person can master it? Yes. Because sadly, due to the Instagram world today, I feel, because I've trained prior to that and trained after that with clients, people think that they really need different stuff every day. Now, you don't need to do the same exercises for 6 weeks, but you do need to find a way to ingrain that movement pattern. So let's say we're doing a bridge. Someone wants that hip extension. You can do your standard glute bridge. Then you can do it maybe on a stability ball. Then maybe you can bring in even like a TRX offset squat. You're still working on that pattern, and you're changing base of support, and you're changing some things, but you're still underlying getting them to do the proper movements. You're not just going from a hinge to a lateral lunge to a transverse lunge to a jump, to a single leg hop and just trying to load them. You're working on a progression. So get creative, because people may not want to do the same exercise every time. So know how to just tweak a movement pattern within a small range. So that way, if you do have that type of client, you can tell them they're doing something different, but you know you're still sticking to the science. But you have to master that. If I can't hinge, or if I can't do a squat on 2 legs, I don't deserve to be doing a single leg squat just because the client's bored and wants something new. Sorry, they haven't earned that. There's ways to get them to that.
And a lot of times too, guys, it's really about the client, because sometimes if you're training seniors and they're really new to these movements, they really want to do the same thing a few different times. So like you said, they grasp that concept and they have a quote win. And we want them to always feel successful, where we're not having to say, oh, you did that wrong, we got to regress you next time. I mean, not like you would say it that way, but that's kind of where that's unfortunately how it is. And so, maybe there's one exercise that you're really wanting them to master. They're almost there. You're having to cue them a lot. And then you can throw that one same exercise in again, but you've changed up different things. Plus, remember that neural continuum that Marty and I have done podcasts on before. And if you're not sure what we're talking about, it's definitely worth going back into the MIR vault, if you will, and find that one, because you'll get a lot of really good information on how to tweak different things with limited equipment as well. And so you're still working, like Marty said, on the same patterning. You're still making sure that the brain is comprehending what the body's doing and everything's working seamlessly, which is the whole point of neuromuscular efficiency, which is what we're trying to achieve. So I really think that it's one of those things that it's okay to do the same thing again, if you have to. If you have them 3 times a week and you did it on Monday and Friday, is that the end of the world? No. But I write programs for clients, and I may give them 2 different workouts to do, and I may be gone for a week or 2 and say, this is what I want you to do. Alternate the days, or do this one this week and this one the next week. And I have never had any pushback.
Yeah, I think the change sometimes is because the trainer's bored, honestly.
Right. 100%.
All right, so myth 3. So let me read this to you, Wendy. So strength training is dangerous for kids and teens. Well-supervised resistant training is safe and beneficial for youth. We know that. It can improve strength, bone density, motor skills, and reduce injury risk. And injury rates are lower than many sports when properly coached.
So this one I think is always very interesting, because when I was going through the program back in the day, they always said, be very careful with strength training because of growth plates. And if you put too much pressure on them, then you can end up having problems later. And it could be because of the different exercises that you're giving these teens or kids. My big thing is I don't need to know what my 9-year-old's 1 rep max is. I'm not going to load up a bar and put him under the bar and say, all right, buddy, I want you to do a chest press to failure and see if the bar crushes him and or if he can lift it. Like, that isn't safe and doesn't make any sense. Plus, what is that going to apply to of what he's doing in his daily activities? So again, there is a way of looking at what is safe and what's not. Now, I will say, we go in the basement, we've got kettlebells, we've got TRX, we've got a lot of different things, and we will do things together, because I'm trying to teach him good patterns. So therefore, it's going to translate into what he's doing either at camp or at baseball or whatever it is that we're focusing on. But again, we're doing higher reps. We're not loading him very heavy, but we're teaching him the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. We're trying to make sure he understands different tempos. And it's a lot of fun because we're working together. But we do more speed, agility, quickness, looking at, his feet, trying to get his core engaged. And, we'll do isometric holds and see who can hold it the longest, things like that, which I know are going to be very beneficial for him. And so I think if we really try to teach patterning, which is what NASM focuses on in the very beginning, that's why when we say the first thing you do after foam rolling and stretching is to go into different types of movement patterning, which is core work, if you will. We're trying to make sure he can understand and move correctly in this like 7 fundamental movement patterns, just to ensure safety. And that's also going to help him later on with whatever he does. And then as he grows, yes, we will add more weight to certain things. We will do things differently and add different types of strength and power. But it is okay as long as you're smart with it and you are showing them exactly what you want to do and spotting them if there is weight involved.
Yeah. And, I never fully understand the myth early on because, my twins, they were doing mixed martial arts at 8 years old, and no one would bat an eye if they picked up their brother and did some type of like carry or move. Well, that's like a 60-pound lift. No one thought about it. Or if they were playing and they jumped out of a tree, that's a pretty aggressive plyometric. No one says a word. In a soccer field, they may run 1.5 miles in practice, but God forbid if you actually went out and ran a mile. So it's just common sense. Now, again, just like anything else, you don't want to overtrain them or, have them do too much. And in a structured program, they should be doing what you said, Wendy, but they're going to be picking up much heavier weight as they get to 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, if they're in athletics anyways, just by playing the sport. So just common sense. So teach them the fundamental move patterns, do a lot of correctives, and unload some of the things they might be doing in other areas of life, and you're absolutely going to be fine.
Yep.
So Wendy, before we get to myth 4, what I'd like to do is take an opportunity to let everybody know that this episode of the Master Instructor Roundtable is brought to you by NASM 1, the membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources. Get the Edge app to schedule and program clients, enjoy half off all certifications and specializations, access free CEUs and more. All this just for $35 a month. Go to nasm.org/membership to learn more about NASM 1. All
right, myth 4. I'll go ahead and read this to you, Marty. We'll get your thoughts and we'll go from there. So this is kind of like the first one, but a little bit different because now it's more woman and female involved here. So lifting weights make you bulky, especially for women. Now, I will say I do have clients or had clients. I don't get them quite as much anymore that say, I can't get big and bulky. I want to be able to fit in my skinny jeans and I want to look really toned. And so that's what we hear a lot for. So people are still having that mindset. And if they lift heavy, that they're just going to blow up if it was just that easy, right? But from what we found in research and what we found looking in all of our textbooks and stuff that's out there on the web, hypertrophy requires sustained training, sufficient calories, and often years of work. Typically, women have lower levels of testosterone and other anabolic hormones, and strength training is critical for health, bone density, and injury prevention.
Yeah, I love this one because, again, going back to the early part of my career, before, and I'll give it the credit it deserves for a few things here in a second, is CrossFit, is I'd have women that wouldn't want to pick up a 5 or 8 pound dumbbell. Like they thought that was it. And again, I could trick them into picking up heavier weight, doing some other type of thing, and then show them that. And they're like, oh, I'm gonna get too bulky. And I was like, if it was only that easy, right? Now, the good news is more and more people are have an understanding, especially females, that I better put on muscle when I can at a certain age because it gets harder. And we know for longevity and for, keeping your health, because what's the best thing to burn calories and burn sugar is muscle. So we are phasing out of that, but even still, it does take more work to gain muscle than, just picking up 5 and 10 pound dumbbells. It takes compound lifts a lot of times, like squats and deadlifts. And you don't have to do those type of exercises to be incredibly fit and strong and still put some muscle on. So the reason I brought up CrossFit is, I'm generalizing, but I definitely saw this trend. If you weren't an endurance athlete, male or female, a lot of men especially didn't do cardio in the gym, and a lot of women didn't do a lot of weights in the gym. And CrossFit kind of helped break down some barriers. And now I see more women doing weights and actually looking to gain muscle. It's a different look now than what you saw in the 90s is fit. That's great. People accept it and look at the women who have the muscle as fit now. And men are more apt to do cardio because, again, they're not trying to always be just 300-pound bodybuilders, more that CrossFit or that athletic person. So this is great. So I think we're there, but don't think that just because you go in the gym that you're automatically going to get that. Take sustained work, supplementation, creatine, protein, diet. It can happen, but it's never as easy as most people. There are some genetic freaks out there, but it's never as easy as most people think to put on a good amount of muscle.
I wish there was something that I could say, oh, let me add this, but that's it. I mean, it is just
we'll jump right into myth number 5. This is another one that I had to knock my head around for years with. So we'll start here. You can spot reduce fat with targeted exercises. So we know now body fat reduction is systematic, not local. Studies show no meaningful fat loss from targeting one area like crunches. That was always one. We didn't do enough abs. And I'm like, what do you mean? We didn't do crunches. It's like, that's not going to get rid of the 7 bagels you had this week. And then energy balance drives fat loss. So Wendy, what do you got?
If this was a thing, I would have buns of steel, y'all. Like I'm telling you, I wouldn't have Greek hips and I'd have a really strong, firm rear end, because that would be what I would target. And there's always an area of your body that people are not happy with. You know, sometimes it's people's arms, sometimes it's their midsection, sometimes it's their hips, sometimes it's their legs. And the thing is, yes, it's important to lift heavier or work on the entire body as a whole. But it's really where you're going to start to lean out is based on, again, nutrition is a big, big driver for that. How many calories are you eating? What are those calories? What are the makeup of those calories? Meaning, is it a lot of sugar and fat, or is there protein and carbohydrate? You know, what is it that makes up your diet? And the thing is back in the day, there was this is when Britney Spears was a thing. She, not that she's still not relevant, I guess, but in my world, I don't hear anything about her, but she used to do 500 crunches a day, and she had this really small waist and great abs. And so I literally had clients that were like, oh, I did my 500 crunches, but they were miserable with low back pain. And guys, you have to think about your psoas, right? If you're crunching and crunching and crunching and your hips aren't properly aligned and your sacrum isn't moving, so your SI joint isn't moving along with you, then that psoas muscle attaches to every one of your lumbar spine. That's just the way that the muscle is. Think of origin and attachment and what it does. So they were actually constantly doing repetitive movements and motion on a muscle that was already overactive that would cause even more of an anterior pelvic tilt. So the thing is if you want to have good abs, then think about what you're doing on your diet, because you need to kind of shred down, right? We want to see the 6-pack. Everyone has one. It's just whether you can see it or not. So it's one of those things that if it was just that simple to target areas to make it look better, then all of us would have those areas dialed, because I know that's a focal point. And it's okay to focus on it. However, you're probably going to see your body is going to start to generally look better, no matter if you just target one side or another, especially if there's a calorie deficit and you're lifting heavy and focusing on burning calories and moving more.
Yeah, and training the big movements burn more calories per workout anyways. So, guys, don't skip the legs.
Oh, please don't, y'all, please don't skip the legs. Come on, as a female,
I had leg day today.
Let me tell you, do not just work on the upper body, because now, you don't want to have this.
It may look like I skip leg days, but I love leg days.
No, I know. And think of the amount of calories that you're burning when you do legs. Bigger muscle groups are going to burn more calories, like you said. But yeah, you don't want to have like this stellar upper body and then peg legs, because you don't ever work the legs. Jeans don't cover it, y'all. I'm telling you. Anyway. Okay. Myth number 6. Squats are bad for your knees. Properly performed squats strengthen the knees, actually. And forces at the knees can be safely tolerated and adapted to. Imagine that. Depth choice can be individualized for mobility, goals, and tolerance.
Yeah, this one cracks me up. I remember a story at one of my country clubs. Yeah, I came in and started changing things around, shocker. And I had all the clients working on their squat patterns. So whatever they needed to do, that part doesn't even matter. But, suspension trainer squats, ball squats, whatever. And one of the doctors comes up and goes, I need to talk to you. I'm like, all right, cool. So I said, later on, I said, what do you got? He's like, I see everybody squatting and it's horrible for their knees. I was like, you know what? We need to have a longer conversation. Come over here, have a seat. And he sits down. I'm like, it's too loud. Come over here. Let's go over here. And then I'm like, well, now let's go in my office. He's like, what? I said, Doc, you just squatted 3 times. What's the problem here? And he looked at me. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, exactly. I said, everybody in this gym today is going to sit down on the toilet at some point. It'd be irresponsible for me not to improve their squats. And then all of a sudden I started telling them what I was doing. And then I'm like, so you want them on a leg extension where there's open chain, which means as they extend their quad, the shear force from the weight at the end of their tibia is driving their tibia and femur in different directions. And I went through the whole biomechanics and I'm like, you're okay with that? And he's like, I'm out. He's like, I never looked at it this way. I just remember people coming in and saying, when I squat in the gym, it hurts. Well, yeah, doc, they probably have bad form, bad technique. They're not doing what they need to do. And they might be instantly loading their squats. We're not loading their squats. He's like, I'll never look at it the same. So the point is, it's a biomechanical necessity to learn to squat properly. Doesn't mean you're ever going to load them, right? Like Wendy, I told you I did legs today. I work out at home because I moved to a new town. The gym doesn't open up for a while. I've got my gym right behind me. I do all my squats on the power plate. I use vibration to increase the intensity. I don't load myself ever. I used to compete in powerlifting. I will never do a barbell squat again in the rest of my life because it's not needed. It's not necessary. I can put on a weight vest. I can do all these different progressions to get the proper load within the range of the motion I can control. Then I can progress into step ups, split stance. All these things are a progression off of a squat. But if you can't work into some level of a squat, no matter what your age, no matter what your ability, it's going to be real hard to progress in fitness and live your normal life.
Well, and I think too, one of the reasons that we really do focus on the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, so the toe is pointed straight ahead. Well, I read an article that if you put them out at 20 degrees, that's actually better for you. Well, are you lacking range of motion and dorsiflexion? And if you don't have 20 degrees of dorsiflexion, then yes, turn your feet out, because you know what? You're going to end up compensating probably somewhere else. However, if you did your assessments, we saw that movement pattern, and we're hopefully foam rolling the lateral gastroc, strengthening the medial gastroc, and we're really working on trying to realign the body the way that it's intended to move. And so if your feet are straight and your knees are over the second and third toe, and you do have good alignment within the torso and basically your shins, right? So we're looking at where your shins and your torso go down. If you're making parallel lines, which is what we're looking for when we do the lateral view of the overhead squat assessment, then what that means is you're sharing the load between your ankle, your knee, and your hip. That means that it's not one joint taking all of it. And we know that the knee is not really the smartest joint in the body. We've talked about that multiple times. So the hips and the ankles tell it what to do. So if we have good alignment at the foot and ankle complex, and we have good alignment at the hip, then we've got all these joints sharing a load of either body weight, or even if you were to use a bar, if you choose to, it's not a bad thing if you can control it. But most people start with a loaded back bar squat, and they have an anterior tilt. Their knees are going in, their feet are going out, and it's a hot mess. So we want to take 2 steps back and be like, okay, if I've got good alignment, I've got a good load share, then everything is going to be an activity of daily living. Like you said, Marty, going to the bathroom, getting in and out of your car, bending over to pick up a piece of paper. If you're a parent and you have a toddler and you go to pick them up, guess what? You're going to squat down. So we're teaching fundamental movement patterns of everyday life activities by trying to reduce the amount of stress. Now, I did say knee over the second and third toe. I didn't say go way past it. If you do go past it, does it mean your knee cap is going to go flying off and you blew out your knee? No. But there are times where your knee will maybe go past it. But if you're strong enough in the ideal alignment when you're in the gym and you're training the muscles properly with good range of motion, then you're going to, no matter what you do, are going to be less likely to get injured, even if you do something that's a little crazy that maybe we wouldn't agree with, because that's what you just do at home and in your life. So there's a way of looking at it. And ideally that kneecap should be over your second and third toe, and you should look for those parallel lines. And if you can train yourself to get that way, then the amount of stress you're putting on the knee is less. Plus they say the same thing with lunges, but if you bend over and you lunge forward to get a piece of paper, guess what? It's an activity. If that back knee is hurting, it's because you're too upright and you're putting all the force on your knee because your hips are too tight.
And guess what? I challenge all of you to walk down a flight of stairs without you letting your knee go over your toe. Good luck.
I know. I mean, it's crazy. And if you don't let your knee go over your toe and you try to keep it too far back, guess what? You're going to have an excessive forward lean, which puts all the weight in your back.
Right. Love it. All right. Myth 7, Wendy. Older adults shouldn't lift heavy. Heavy resistance training. Right. Are we older adults now? That's a whole nother conversation.
You are. I'm not there yet.
Hey, it's age related. Men age slower. So I'm just saying, like, just saying.
I'll let it alone, Marty.
Heavy resistance training is highly effective for maintaining muscle, bone density, function. No kidding. Research reports that greater than 70% of 1 rep max best strength gains in adults have medically cleared. We know progressive resistance is the most effective intervention to preserve and build muscle in older adults. If you don't use it, you lose it. Without strength training, adults can lose, get this, 3 to 8% of muscle mass per decade after the age of 30. So guess what, Wendy? You must be an older adult because you're not 29 anymore. And training helps maintain functional independence.
Well, again, another plug for the Master Instructor Roundtable, but Marty and I have done a lot of different topics surrounding this. Our seniors, especially because obviously I've talked about my dad openly. I've done everything to try to keep him healthy and mobile and trying to show him the importance of building muscle. But guys, again, the point that Marty read, without strength training, adults can lose up to 3 to 8% of muscle. That's a lot. And that's after 30. So if somebody lives to 80, think about, how much they've lost just in the 50 years past that. And that should be their active years. They're hopefully retired. Hopefully they may have grandchildren and they want to do things and they don't want to be immobile and sedentary because they feel terrible. So the thing is think about we've done one on osteoporosis, sarcopenia, and we've shown that research says that if they can lift heavy, now again, I'm not going to do a 1 rep max with a grandmother. But I am going to have her lift heavy, and maybe we'll do 6 reps one day. Maybe we'll do 10 reps another day. And maybe the next time it's 15 reps, depending on where she is in the model and what she can safely perform without compensation. So I do want them to lift heavy because the heavier that I can get them to lift without the compensations, meaning that I'm not putting stress on their body in any other way, is actually going to be very beneficial for the longevity of when they're able to move and do things that they want to do actively. And so that to me is like super, super important.
Yeah, it's critical. I mean, there's so many benefits to strength training when we look at even dementia, Alzheimer's, fighting diabetes, all that, being self-sufficient, injury prevention. So it's here to stay. Get in there and do what's appropriate, but don't be afraid to progress.
100%. And these were just a few of the myths, guys, that we've kind of uncovered. I know Marty and I were really trying to focus on things that we commonly hear and what we can do differently. And it's one of those things where we're hoping that if a client walks in the door and they say something about, I don't want to get bulky, or my mom was saying that she doesn't want to work out because, now she's older, she doesn't have to. She's earned the right, as Marty always says, not to work out because she's at a certain age. We want you guys to be able to have the information, as well as when we keep reading it and finding out more and more about it. The more we talk about it openly, I think it just becomes an easier conversation to have, and more people are learning and reading more. So some of these myths we don't hear as much as we used to.
Right. No, I think that was well said, Wendy. I don't really have anything to add to that. I just think the key point is go to your assessments, get them to move well, find out the movement patterns that they can do, understand progressions and regressions, start off with your correctives, and then safely and appropriately load them in patterns that they can control, and you will see tremendous results.
100%. Well, Marty, I appreciate you going through these myths with me as always. And obviously your insight to things that maybe I should have said that you said maybe a lot better than I could have. So, but if you have any questions,
we're here for each other.
Always. But if you have any questions, you can always find me on Instagram at wendy.batts13, or you can email me at wendy.batts@nasm.org.
Yep. And my information, Instagram is dr.martymiller72, and then email is marty.miller@nasm.org. So we can't thank you enough for joining us this edition of Master Instructor Roundtable. And until next time, have a good one.